What's up, guys? I'm going to talk to you today about rod holders and what I use, my preference for rod holders, especially for dropping baits off the beach. Now, this seems to be the go-to for everybody. It's the same aluminum spike you get at Bass Pro, your local tackle shops, what have you. The only difference this one has is I broke the little plastic piece on the end that's supposed to protect your rod from the metal. I broke it hammering it down. So I just took a PVC and I put it on there and I actually did a little cutout here. So when I use a spinning reel, it sits in here and doesn't spin, because one thing that I can't stand about any poles is when you put a rod in there and it's facing where you want it to go and then the wind blows it or something moves it this way and it just starts to spin away. This helps lock it in place. So if you're unfamiliar, this is what I would call an upgrade that you can do. A lot of people, if they don't use the spikes, would use just PVC. If you use that, totally fine. Try cutting a little notch in there if you're using a spinning reel. But we're not gonna talk about that today. We're gonna talk about conventional reels, dropping baits, using stuff like this. And if you use stuff like this, most people use PVC pipes. Again, nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with any of these. It is a personal preference. I want to make sure that's clear. This is my personal preference, what I like. And I think, well, I get a lot of questions about this on the beach, so I figured I'd just go ahead and explain it here. You guys might like it. The first thing that I'm going to say that you can do as an upgrade, whether you use PVC or a metal pole, is drill a hole through it and put a bolt. This serves two purposes. If you do a long enough bolt, it will work as, number one, I'm assuming if you use a conventional reel, you have a butt like this to go into a harness to fight the shark. Number one is once it gets down, the butt will lock into place and the reel will not spin. It's the same thing as using the spinning reels. Once you get this thing lined up, I don't want it spinning left and right. I don't want it going like this. I don't want the wind to move it or nothing. I want it locked into place. So that's the first benefit to using I'm gonna call it just a bolt, nothing fancy. But if you make it long enough, you can hang your harness from it. You can hang a flashlight from it. You can hang whatever you want. I personally like to hang my harness and plate from this, so that if my reel's going off, I can run right over to it and I can just grab the harness right off and just put it right on. And then I didn't leave a whole lot of room on the backside, but I do have a little lanyard with like a flashlight or a headlamp. And so everything's right here. But truth be told, I don't use this anymore. Why? Because I upgraded again. If you've fished with me, you've probably seen this, or even if you've just followed me for a little while, you've seen this. This monstrosity of a rod holder. This is a 7-foot fencing post. I got this from Home Depot. It was like 18 bucks, something like that. Yes, it is 7 foot long. That serves two purposes. The first purpose is I use a shorter rod on the 50. It's like 5.5 foot, it's like 5.5 foot, something like that. Because it's being so short, with a shorter rod holder, the line hangs lower. A lot of times it hangs in the waves, in the wash, and then it can get seaweed, it can get washed around. You don't want that. With it being a longer rod, I can go down 3-4 feet, and it still has some height up to keep the line out of the water. Or I can go 1 or 2 feet down and have more height to get it out of the water, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is that I fish solo more often than I probably should. And when I do that, I like to make sure I have a sturdy pole, right? How do I phrase this? When I'm fighting a shark solo and I have to go get it in, I like to know that if this is 3 or 4 feet down in the sand and I have 3 or 4 feet above the sand, I can put the rod back in here when I go out there to wrestle the shark, and I can put some drag on the reel, and it will not bend this pipe, it will not break this pipe, it will not pull this out of the sand. This thing is down deep enough and it is sturdy enough to hold the rod and hold the shark, while I, if I'm solo, can run out there and get it. So that's one of the main benefits. The other thing too is, again, if you're fishing solo, you don't have anyone to hold on to you. So if I'm all strapped up, if I'm all harnessed up, and it starts to pull me towards the water, this thing being such a sturdy base in the sand is something that I can hold on to, something that I can lean on, and I will not go forward. Again, if it's something that I can't fight from the harness, if it's something that is just, if I hook up into something I really should not be catching by myself, I can put the rod back in here and I can fight it from the pole, knowing that this pole will not go anywhere. So the main reason to upgrading to this is for the peace of mind that this is a very sturdy base. This is not going to go anywhere. It's going to hold the rod, the reel, the shark in place. It'll even hold me in place. The height is just the added benefit of knowing that this can sit up higher, right? You know, I know a lot of you are going to say, how do you get this thing down in the sand? I'm going to make that in a separate video, because I actually have a special technique I use without a mallet that I can get this thing down as far as I can get it. Like, I've gotten this thing, I had a line drawn on here. I've gotten this thing, I don't know, 3.5 feet without a mallet whatsoever. And I'll show you that in a separate video. There's a technique. And here you can see the upgrade I was talking about earlier. I wrapped it up in electrical tape just because I didn't want it to rust. But it's long enough for me to hang my harness on this side, and this one's actually metal, so my flashlight, instead of using the lanyard, is magnetic. I stick it to the back of the pole right here, and again, if I'm going solo or if I just need some extra light, whatever it is, I can put my flashlight here. It shines towards the ocean and I don't even need to hold it. So it's a win-win all around. It's one pole to rule them all. You only need one good steady rod holder like this. You won't need PVC pipes. I consider it an investment. Most people are going to spend a few dollars on a PVC pole, and then after a while, if you're hammering it in, it's going to crack. Or personally, I don't think PVC poles go in the sand as easy as this does. Maybe because this is heavier, maybe it's the technique that I'm using, which I'll show you, but for whatever reason, I get this thing in the sand in less than 2 minutes. Like, it is just down in there without a hammer. Probably about a minute, honestly, if it's good enough sand, there's not a lot of rocks. And then this is just taped up top. This is measured out so that my reel isn't actually touching this, but I like it taped up anyway, just in case for whatever reason. But I have it measured out so that the reel sits. Let me show you one more time. So I measured it out so that there's enough distance between the end of the pole and the reel so that it doesn't scratch it up, doesn't mess it up. I would normally wrap this up in tape if the reel was resting on it, which I did with one of my other PVC poles, which ended up breaking. But I did this, I don't know, just to be on the safe side. But measure it out before you drill so that your butt makes contact with this bolt and your reel isn't touching the top of the pole. Okay. This video is a little bit all over the place. I've been meaning to make it. The main takeaway that I want to do with this video is the fencing post. My buddies in North Carolina showed me this last summer, and since I got it, it is really, I don't want to say it's changed my life, but it has really been an upgrade. You know, I used this for the longest time, which is funny. So the bottom end of this is the bottom end of one of the aluminum spikes, and it's because I used the aluminum spikes before and I didn't realize how much drag I had on the slammer setup, and as soon as a black tip took it, it started pulling like 25 pounds of drag, and it bent the other sand spike in half. And so I basically threw out the top piece and just took the end and taped it on here just so I could have a little bit more height, because at that point I was like, I don't want the 50, which is on a 5.5 foot rod, sitting so low. I want a little bit higher. So this gave me like an extra 2 feet to sit above the sand. And then I realized that still wasn't enough. And I had upgraded to a bigger PVC pole, which since I have thrown out or given away, did something, I don't know. When I was fishing with some people in North Carolina and I started seeing these and I started asking questions, and then I realized the benefits to having this, not just the height, not just the convenience of getting it in the sand a lot easier, but the peace of mind knowing if I'm by myself, I can put the rod in there, I can hold on to it, you know, the rod can stay in there. If I fall asleep, that's the thing, right? A lot of people, me included, you know, they don't like to sleep on the sand. I end up crashing every now and then, but the fear is you're gonna wake up and your rod and reel is gonna be in the water floating away, or you're not gonna hear it go off and it's gonna break the pipe. Something's gonna go wrong, right? Because you're asleep and you don't know what's going on. With this, 3 feet down, sometimes 4 feet, but most of the time I go about 2 or 3 feet down. I'm telling you, it is sturdy. I can put this thing 3 feet down and I can push on it as hard as I want and it does not move. This thing will not move. I don't care how strong the shark is, especially if you're falling asleep. You're not leaving the reel much above free spool. You know, you're letting the shark take the line and run with it, but you never know. It could get bumped up. Anything can happen, right? Even if you flipped up the drag to fight the shark, it is not pulling this in, right? 18 bucks, Home Depot, I'm sure Lowe's has it, I'm sure Ace Hardware has it. Gets you I think it's galvanized fencing post, that's what it's listed as. You don't have to get 7 foot if you don't want to, but I think they sell them in 5s. I just think that you should why not have the option, right? I'll show you the video of being able to get it down in there deeper without a mallet, by hand, and why not have the option to have it higher rather than lower? If you want to have it lower, you get a 7 footer, you just put it down there 3 or 4 feet. If you want to have it higher, just put it down 2 feet. Whatever you want to do. But this is my rod holder I use for the Abbott. This is going to be what I use for all of my drop shark baits. You're going to see this in a lot of my videos, a lot of my posts. It's a game changer, it really is. If you're using the aluminum step down rod holder you get from Tackle Shops, Bass Pro, if you're using PVC pipe, even if you're using a PVC pipe without this bolt through it to hang stuff on, to keep your rod from spinning around in circles, just try that. Like, this alone is an upgrade that's gonna make it worthwhile. This is gonna change your world if you drop shark baits, I'm telling you. It's a little bit more of a hassle to transport if you don't have a truck. But I'm assuming if you're dropping your own baits, you are hauling a kayak down to the beach. And if you're hauling a kayak, then you can just strap this to the kayak and tie it down, put it on your roof, whatever. But yeah, give it a try. I really think this is gonna make a world of a difference to you. This is a little bit longer video and I'm kind of rambling a little bit because I didn't plan this out too much. I just kind of wanted to cover all the bases. If you have any questions on rod holders, on this particular little setup that I use, leave a comment down below. You can shoot me a message on Instagram. I will get back to you. Other than that, keep fishing.